Welcome to the Aledo Bearcats Coaches Show podcast, a presentation of Real Country 92.1 Hank FM. Live from Blue Rays in New Orleans and Hudson Oaks, the Aledo Bearcats Coaches Show podcast is brought to you by H5 Sports Barn in Aledo and Hiley Mazda of Fort Worth. And now, here's the voice of the Bearcats, Kevin Lonnquist.
And we welcome you to Blue Rays of New Orleans here in Hudson Oaks for the Aledo Coaches Show podcast. I'm Kevin Lonnquist, and want to remind you that the podcast is brought to you here by Blue Rays of New Orleans, celebrating their 20th anniversary. They also have locations in Crowley and in Lake Worth. Our presenting sponsors are H5 Sports Barn in Aledo and Hiley Mazda of Fort Worth. Well, as much as enthusiasm I showed for last week's show that it was President's Day and it was basketball, and if your teams are still playing on President's Day week, if you will, you're having a great season. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but the basketball season is over, unfortunately, for both the Lady Cats and the Bearcats. The Lady Cats fell to Amarillo Tascosa 36-29 in the 5A Division I Region I semifinals. That game out in Haskell, and we'll talk to Donny here in just a few moments about just the challenge of trying to find that location, because they were going all over West Texas trying to find a place to play that game because of the weather. Their season ends at 23-12, 10-2, and they finished in second place in District 5A. The Bearcats lost to Denton High, a team that is still playing, by the way. They lost that game 45-40 in the 5A Division I Region I opening round, that game at Keller Central last Tuesday. The Bearcat season ends at 27-7. But, of course, there's that first ever district championship. Got to make sure that that's always made importance because of what was accomplished. And, of course, they captured the District 5A title at 11-1. Of course, in this only segment here, we're going to be joined by girls head coach Donny, as I mentioned, and boys head coach Brian Blackburn. And so I think both of you can take it out on me because I might have oversold or whatever the case may be. But first of all, congratulations, because when you have 20-plus wins in a season and you get to the postseason, we all know that the playoffs are a total crapshoot. It's about matchups. It's about you can have a bad night or one bad quarter that can just sink you, and you don't. And there's that, and I've asked you guys about this last week about just it's a different style of game. And I'll start with you, Donny, just because you all obviously had to go out to Haskell, which is where we didn't promote where it was going to last week because we thought it was going to Vernon. But let's just stick to about just playing in a game like that, because there's so many, the emotions are so high and so low because of what's riding on it.
Yeah, definitely, and a lot of variables fell into our lap that day that were kind of out of our control. So, just continuing to press upon the girls about, just staying mentally focused and on what's important. And I was extremely proud of their resiliency that day. I mean, we left at 10:30 in the morning and didn't get to a gym until about 4:30, so it was tough. But they did a good job of staying resilient and just staying locked in and, just enjoying the journey. I mean, we kind of made it a big field trip, basically, and just traveled Texas. So it was kind of fun.
Okay, and then, Brian, for you, obviously, there's always that excitement. You want to prove that winning a district title means something, and then you want to start playing it into the playoffs. Didn't work out, against Denton High. But just take us through just the experience of just going through a game like that, and hopefully what your guys took out of that and say, okay, this is what this is like versus what it took for 12 games to win a district title.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us was it really came down to 5 plays, 2 offensive plays and 3 defensive plays, and that's kind of the small margin of error when it comes to playoffs, and so that's what it came down to, and I think the guys know that, and I think they understand that how close we were, and then the fact that Denton is still playing. Actually, 3 of the 4 teams from their district are in the regionals.
Yeah,
and so we understand that how close we were, and I know it's going to motivate our guys this spring to continue to work hard and kind of build on what was accomplished this season.
I know when I talk about the playoffs too in basketball, I equate it to like the NCAA tournament, and my only words of wisdom about the NCAA tournament, or in this case, the Texas high school girls and boys basketball playoffs, is that it's cruel. It's really cruel, because when you get into this and you've had this great resume of everything that you've done throughout the course of the year, and then to have it end in one game. Of course, Donny, you all went 3 rounds, but to have it all, it all in, it just shows you the gravity of what it is, how it all changes, and And you don't want that to take away from everything that was accomplished, even though that's hard to do, I would think, in some respects. And that's where you've really got to work on your guys and say, you can't dwell on what happened last Tuesday against Denton. You got to think about the work you put in between really going back to the summer, then workouts in October, because you guys got to 27 wins, most in school history. You also won a district title. That's happened. That's something you're going to reflect upon Pondley. Don't let 45-40 to Denton define what this season was all about.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And so, our season is more than just one game or one day. And so, on last Tuesday, Denton was the better team, and unfortunately, it ends there, and I hate that for our seniors that's how it had to end. But I think when we do look back on this in 5 years, you'll look back and say, wow, what a great year it was. Not just one day or one game or just district. It was the whole collective, and I think our guys are going to remember that.
Okay, so let's just talk about the games themselves. I mean, Donny, let's talk about as you talked about the field trip, because that's what it really then the tour of Texas, because as we originally had promoted and what you all originally had set up is that it was going to be played that Tuesday afternoon at Vernon High School. Then you were blowing up my phone because it was going here and then it was going there, and then you had to wind up going to Haskell. It was because of the anticipated frozen precipitation that was supposed to come through Texas Tuesday evening. So just talk about what that day was like, knowing that Vernon's not an option. We got to find another place to play.
Yeah, it was real stressful on the bus, because, our biggest factor, the whole thing was obviously player safety, and when Vernon canceled school at the half day, we knew that was no longer an option, and so then it became down to the gamesmanship involved in this whole playoff format, to where we knew if we didn't play Tuesday night and had to play Wednesday, then Denton Ryan would have flipped us to play Thursday.
Right.
Like the Tascosa coach and I both understood that was what was at stake if we had agreed to move the game to Wednesday. So we wanted to do everything in our power to play the game Tuesday night. We got on the phone frantically trying to figure out where they were at, where we were at, what's going to be mutual for both of us to meet. We started calling gyms, and thankfully, we got a hold of one. We were just outside of Decatur, and we had to turn around and go west all the way to Haskell. And so we, stopped at a little town called Seymour.
Yep, heard of it.
We stopped there, and I knew a good friend of mine that was the head boys coach there, worked camp with him. So he let us in the gym to go in there and get some shots up and kind of get out of the bus for a little bit. And then we headed to Haskell, and I've never been to Haskell in my life, and so so it was and neither Seymour. So I mean, it was just a good experience, and we just kept telling the kids the whole time, hey, let's just have fun with this and enjoy it, I mean, and we kept mentioning, there's only 32 teams that are still playing right now, so just be thankful that we're one of them, and so it was good. Like I said, their minds were really right. They were sharp. When we got to the gym, we were able to get. Haskell did a really good job of coordinating some warm-up times with all of us to make sure that all 4 teams playing that night were able to get warm-up time in, so that was good. And, I felt like we were ready for the game. I mean, the thing was, we told the kids we can't use this as an excuse because Tascosa had the same circumstances.
Right. And they had to travel farther, too. I actually looked at the Google Maps on this. You all had to go about 180 miles. They were coming about 230 or something like that.
Yeah, so from Haskell to Tascosa is 3.5 hours, and for us to Haskell is about 2.5. So, but from where we were at in relation to the map, they were in Childress. We were almost to Vernon, so it made sense to meet there. But yeah, and that's what we just told the kids. At this point, both of us are playing on the same circumstances. We both had to travel. We both been in the bus a long days, so. There's no variables to where we can say they're unfair to us. At the end of the day, it was us just executing. And unfortunately, as Brian alluded to, you're just a few possessions away in a game like that. And for us, we had our breaks. I mean, 3-point game with a minute left, and we just missed too many shots down the stretch that could have put us closer. But I'm proud of the way they battled for sure. I mean, Tascosa was averaging 57 points a game, and we held them to their lowest point total of the year. Well, to that point, held them to 36, and then Denton Ryan ended up finishing them off and held them to lower than we did. But it was a good year and a good game for us.
I was going to say, for you guys to hold them to that kind of point total, also number 4 in the state, I think it was, and won over 30 games. And the one thing I'd mentioned to you too is that they were 2-2 in games decided by single digits this year going into that contest. So I'm wondering here is that, did they kind of feel it because they've been blowing these people out? And even in some of their losses, 2 of their other losses, they were kind of blown out by double digits. But it's kind of interesting because when you have teams like that get into these tight games and they've been accustomed to winning by double figures, it's a different mindset, and maybe they start to panic a little bit. And I'm wondering if, you talked about the shots. We were talking about this before we went on the air about how you all had a couple of looks with about a minute to go that were right there. Unfortunately, didn't go in. And if you make it a 1-point game, because it was a 3-point deficit at the time, maybe it kind of changes their mental outlook, and obviously could have given you guys a huge mental lift, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we started to gain a lot of momentum there. They got up about, I want to say it was 8. They were kind of running away with it a little bit, and then we Liz hit a big 3 in the corner, and we kind of got back in the game to where momentum was really shifting to where I felt like had we cut it to 1, it could have been a different game. But there's a lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas in a game like that,
right.
And they're extremely well coached, and so in a game that comes down that close, you got to make free throws. They were 14 of 16 from the free throw line. So they could, hats off to them and their staff. They did a great job of getting out of that game, executing when it needed to. So
that's an amazing stat too. More than 1/3 of their points came at the line.
Well, what's crazier than that is 16 points came off of our turnovers. So 30 of their 36 points came from either free throws or turnovers that we gave them. Like we pitched it across the third of the court and they stole it and laid it up. So it was really tough to digest the numbers when we went back and looked at it because we beat them up bad on the boards. We controlled the defensive boards. We out-rebounded them offensively. They didn't hit a single three-pointer the whole game. We did a lot of things that should have translated to winning that game. And that's what I'm most proud about is we executed a game plan to the best of our abilities. And at this point in the year, that's really all you can hope for. When you're in the playoffs as a head coach, you can just hope that you give your kids the best chance to win. And if you sit down at night and feel like your strategic plan was the best that it could have given your kids a chance to win, then you've been a success in the playoffs because styles make fights in these kind of situations, and sometimes the styles don't really line up. And, it's just about trying to be sharp and do what you can control the variables that you can control. And I thought we did that.
Brian, for you, obviously this game with Denton High was pretty much nip and tuck. I read about the Sheets kid, too, a 6'8" kid who's got the offer from Oklahoma State. Heard, too, about their point guard not being – or one of their guards not being available because he'd been ejected earlier in the game before, and so he wasn't available. But nonetheless, just kind of take it through the game because it looked like you guys were right there in striking distance, and in the fourth quarter you couldn't buy a shot if you wanted to.
Right. So we were up 1 at the end of the first quarter, down 4 at halftime, down 3 at the end of the third, and then we make the first shot of the fourth quarter to tie the game. And so it's a tie game, and then the hardest thing for us was, since we press on makes, because it was a low-scoring game, we were not able to get into our press as much. And so I think that's what was hardest for us in the second half was – it was very much a half-court game, both teams.
Yes.
And they're very long, they're very athletic, and, it was hard for us to score in the half court without playing the pace that we're comfortable.
Right.
And so, they're a really good defensive team and a really good athletic rebounding team, and they knew, we knew that that's how they were at their best. And so, I felt like our guys were prepared, holding them to 45 points after they scored, I think they scored 74 the previous game. We did a lot of really good things defensively. We were really tough and had to battle, and we just couldn't get enough baskets to fall. And, I think part of that was that style of play where, we want to press and kind of get out and run, but because it was a low-scoring game and low possession game, it was very much a half-court game. And, like you said, I think we scored 6 points in the fourth quarter.
Right.
We scored the first 3, and then we hit another 3, and then that was it. we were trying to get to the basket and trying to get to the line. And, in playoff games like that, it's going to be pretty physical. We weren't really going to benefit from some of those things. And so, yeah, it's tough pill to swallow. And, I'm getting all riled up just talking about it still. But, proud of our preparation and our defensive execution for most of the game. Really, it came down to being able to score against their long, athletic matchup zone, and that was tough for us down the stretch.
Yeah, and obviously, unfortunately, too, this district did have a rough time against that district too. I mean, everybody got knocked out in the first round. And I think Donny was mentioning this to me a moment ago before we went on the air. 3 of their teams are still in the playoffs. They're in the regional semifinals.
Right.
So I think it kind of shows. And a lot of people will make a big deal about, well, that shows you the strength of the district, but it's either a case of, I guess it could show based on their scoring margins or things like that. But nonetheless, I think, was there a style, though, about that district, though, as you were looking at potential opponents saying, this style of play in this district is a heck of a lot different from ours, and we've got to be on top of that. What did you notice about that district as you were starting to prepare for, possibilities of who you could face in the opening round?
I mean, honestly, I think the biggest difference is everybody has a Division I player.
Yeah.
So, Birdville has 2 guys that are Division I players. One of them's a junior, one of them's a senior. Denton has a Division I player. Colleyville Heritage has, a college player. And so I think that's kind of the biggest thing is, I think just maybe step up talent-wise, those Division I type players, and those can help, win you games in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that might have probably been the biggest, factor that we noticed. But still, even with that, we had a chance to come out on top and find a way to win. And so,
if there's anything for both of you gentlemen, as you've had a chance to, now sometimes you don't even want to look at the film, or maybe it's just too painful and it takes you several days and saying, I guess I got to break this down. I guess I'll just look at it on Saturday or whatever. But anyway, but whenever you did get around to looking at it and saying, what was your takeaway from when you had to break it down and say, this was the difference in the game? And I'll start with you, Donny.
I was a glutton for punishment, so I watched it quite a bit early the first few days. But, the one thing that I took away from it was not so much that game, but just the team that I was watching then as opposed to the team I watched in October. And how completely different we looked and played and executed as opposed to what we did in October and November. And so I really tried to look at it from that lens and not so much about, that particular game because, as you talked to Brian about earlier, we knew it was going to be tough. Their district they got the number 1 player in the country in their district, Aaliyah Chavez from Monterey. And, she's averaging 37 a game, and Tascosa held her to 14, so I was pretty sure they could, guard Liz.
Right.
So we knew that, what we were facing was going to be extremely tough. And so I just wanted to approach it from our growth and not really beat myself up on that one game because I didn't want that to define the season or what we had accomplished.
All right, Brian, what about for you in terms of that?
So maybe this is a weird tradition or something that I've always done. I don't watch the game until I go to the state tournament. So once I go to the state tournament, and last year I was coaching in the state tournament, so I didn't have to watch the game.
Right.
So I'll get home late after one of the games, and then I'll watch our game, and I'll fall asleep watching our game, and it's easier for me to swallow. And so, as a head coach, there's been 3 times where I've lost to the team that made it to state out of our region at the regional tournament. 1 time 2 times at Boswell, that team's made it to the regional final, and so I got to watch them in the regional final. And so I just wait. So I haven't watched it. I've looked at the stats, and but I will watch it. I guess next Thursday is when I'll watch it. So I can text you what I find out.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so why don't we just talk about key highlights of this season, where maybe it was a defining point for you all, where you felt like this season had a chance to turn out the way it did. I kind of think I know what the answers are going to be, but I'm just going to go ahead and start with it anyway. Brian, I'll start with you about where you felt like this was, where this turning point was, where this season could be special and did turn out to be special.
Yeah. I think it was our start for us. I think the guys believed because of how hard we were working in the fall. And then the teams we were playing in some of our fall tournaments, we beat Plano High School by double digits, and then we played, we played North Crowley. We played some really good, talented teams just in the fall, and we're really competitive. Prosper was another team that we had a great game against and kind of had a chance to win. So. Then when the season started and we start off, and I don't even remember what our record was to start the season, 15-1,
something like that.
Yeah. I think that was kind of where might have been 18-1 or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that was kind of where, like, after those first 4 or 5 games, I think we were scoring a lot of points and we were having a lot of fun. I think our guys are like, okay, this is different. And so I think that was kind of, we were just able to kind of roll with that.
Okay, and then what about for you, Donny?
I think there was 2 key moments for sure. I think the first one was our Duncanville tournament experience, because we got a chance to see if we improved, because we played Prestonwood Christian, who beat us in the Burleson Centennial or Burleson High.
I figured you were going to bring this game up.
Yeah, they beat us in the championship game of that Burleson tournament, and for us to get them at the Duncanville tournament, and I think that was an incredible game for us, to where it gave us a lot of confidence coming out, and we were able to beat Foster Ridge at their place right out of that tournament. And then I think the second one for us, and it's just more so from a community standpoint, as well as for the trajectory of our season in the playoffs, and that was having middle school night with Foster Ridge at our place, and coming up with a huge win to clinch the Division I number 1 seed. But just to see the outpour of community support that Brian and I had worked hard to establish this year, and with what Brian has been doing, like behind the scenes with the halftime stuff, and just a lot of the legwork that he's put into that, and then our relationship with the junior high and getting so many of those junior high kids there, just really spoke volumes to me of what we've been trying to do this year. So I think those 2 were the big key moments for me, to where I realized that this is the year that I was hoping for.
Yeah, and then to finally touch on that too is just the fact that for as much as Aledo basketball, boys and girls, has always been considered as kind of fallen in football's shadow, and a lot of sports do it to an extent.
Yeah.
But the fact that you all had this kind of season, though, maybe gives you each program a little bit more of its own voice. And this is nothing against J.D. Robinson or Nikki Hiles or anything like that. But maybe what this did is kind of give you all kind of a different scene, a different footing, if you will. Do you feel that way, or do you hope that's moving in that direction, Brian?
Well, I think first off, having Donny here has been great in regards to, like, trying to implement something new, or just coming up with a plan together to, like, hey, let's, we don't want to, we never want to hurt any other sports, but we do want to make a name for ourselves in regards to the athletic program and boys and girls basketball. And so I think we had a lot of alignment with that, and coming in and like, hey, let's try to do this, basketball night. Let's try to do the Meet the Bearcat. Let's try to do, all these types of community outreach things. And so that's been great to get with him and be able to since we knew each other already, get a chance to kind of make things fresh, I guess, for us, and try to do some new stuff and kind of put our own twist on it, just from our experiences. And, I've learned a lot from him this year, just because seeing how he practices and what he does, and then also how he, incorporates middle schools and open gyms, just all kinds of things like that have helped the boys program, seeing what the girls do. But, yeah, I think, every program has to have their own culture, but then every program also wants to have, like, control their own narrative. And so I think we've been able to do that.
Yeah.
So with our social media, my assistant coaches do an unbelievable job, Travis Jones, with our social media. And so, like, you can control your own narrative. And so we're not lying about what happened during the season, but we do want to spotlight the things that are most important to us, and then we can kind of give a picture of what that is to the community. And so we've had the opportunity to do that. Our athletic department, our athletic director, Coach Belk has been great with supporting us with those types of things. And so I think both of our programs have been able to control our own narrative, tell our story of what the season has been like and what the season was like. And then I think people will hang on to that and it'll carry over to our programs next year.
You know, and Donny, to piggyback on what Brian has said too, there's also maybe that challenge too of wanting to see if where you've accomplished your success in previous stops, to come into a place like this that has some success, of course, what you inherited, but taking that next step so that it has its own voice, drawing that own narrative, as Brian alluded to.
Yeah, I do agree with that, and I was told multiple times when I took the job that Aledo can't ever get past the second round in girls basketball. It's been a struggle there, every year. Look at the records and this, that, and the other. But it was important for me, like Brian said, is like we have the ability to control our own narrative. I mean, we really do. And I never really, thought of it that way. I just kind of kept plugging along. But I think what helped me so much was, and like Brian said earlier, is like we both had vested interests in the same thing. Like we were both hired to do the same things, to try to help take the program to the next level. And to navigate change is hard sometimes, especially when you're by yourself. But when you have somebody like Brian that I've known for so long and that have had such a great respect for what he's done in the business, it made it easy to couple with somebody like that to navigate. Because then when you're planning things, they make sense to both of them. Like, hey, let's do elementary night. Man, that's a great idea. Hey, let's do middle school night. Hey, let's do teacher appreciation night. And so when you're saying those things to somebody that's been hired essentially as the same thing that you need to do, it makes that relationship a lot easier. And I think when you can join those two programs together like we did, I think you can really get the gym going. And for me, it was great because I've never been at a school, when I was an assistant at North Crowley, to where we played same side as the boys. Like I've always been at schools where it's like girls play one side, boys play the other, opposite sides. And so this was really cool for me to get a chance to see our boys play. Yeah. So that was a big deal getting that culture set.
And I think the fun thing for me is that picture that I think that you sent to Donny, that you sent to me, Donny, was the night of the home games against Brewer, that first meeting with Brewer, and how the communities were. And I think that's kind of an indication of the payoff. And I know you talked about the win over Fossil Ridge to clinch that top seed in Division I, but it just seemed like that Brewer night, though, at home really kind of set the tone.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about the seasons looking ahead as we start to wrap up this season, of course. For the Lady Cats, you all are going to be losing several seniors. That includes Kinley Elms, as well as Augie Carleone, as well as Ella Isbell, a couple of others that are leaving. But let's just talk about what you have coming back, because Liz Griffin is coming back, Brenda Clark, Tiara Butler's coming back, just to name a couple. Just talk about what the core that's coming back, and that's what's going to be the key, though, is for this group. And then you also have a tournament, too, that you've already been invited to as well.
Yeah, it's been a really good off season so far for us. We're going to have to do our schedule a little different. We had a couple teams cancel on us, which happens sometimes when you have success.
That's respect too,
and so and I'm okay with that because we need to make sure we align ourselves with a little bit better competition in the preseason. So, I'm excited about what we have returning. I mean, when we carried to the playoffs, we have we carried 14 girls in the playoffs. I brought 2 up from JV, and out of those 14, 9 of them returned. And I can announce it now since we are no longer in the playoffs, but we have 3 first-team All-District players returning. Tiara Butler, Brooke Dempsey, and Liz, they all 3 made first team.
That's tremendous. Congratulations.
I feel like I appreciate that, yeah. And, now we lose some big ones. I mean, there's no doubt Kinley Elms and Ella, they both were second-team All-District players that did a tremendous job for us when they came out of volleyball. And, we lose a kid like Augie. Augie was honorable mention. And, we lose some tough seniors to replace. I think the thing that's going to be hardest to replace for us with the seniors leaving is not even related to skill, but it's related to the chemistry and the love for each other that those seniors had. Like Rebecca Gerald is probably one of the coolest and most amazing seniors I've ever coached in my 26 years. And she set a precedence in the locker room that there was no drama and there was nothing but love and respect for each other. And I think that's going to be the hardest thing for us to replace, because the talent-wise, I think we're going to be fine. I mean, we've got pieces that, I mean, we played for a big chunk of our year without Kinley and Ella.
Right.
So, I mean, like, I feel like we'll be okay adjusting to that. It's just going to be that play for each other mentality that this group had, where they weren't concerned about who's getting what minutes or anything like that. It was just, you get whatever minutes you get, and you're going to do it the best of your ability. And that's where I feel like we're going to really miss. I mean, like a Savannah Salas, I mean, she rarely played much in the games, but, man, in practices, she was a beast. I mean, she gave us everything we had to make us better. And so I feel like that's where my challenge has been in our exit interviews with our kids is, what are you going to do to replace the Rebecca Geralds, the Savannah Salases, even our two student assistants like Peyton Flores and McKenna Sweat, who were all in on everything we did, it's like, what are you going to do to replace that? Because we got great kids. I mean, every kid on our roster made academic all-district.
That's amazing. That's great news.
We've got great kids, but it's just that culture piece that those seniors take that is a credit to what Nikki built with them, and it carried over. And I feel like that's one that I'm most intrigued about. We got invited to the McDonald's Texas Invitational, which is a huge honor. Having been there multiple years in my coaching career.
Down in Pasadena, right?
Yes, sir. I used to go to it when I was at North Crowley on the boys' side, and then at Cedar Park we went all years I was there. We won it the second year we went back-to-back. We won it that year. And so I know the prestige in it and the honor in it. It's a great competitive tournament. It's got 32 girls teams in it. And it's just it's an amazing opportunity. So when we got that call, I felt really good about where our program is. I kind of felt there was a little bit of validation from the rest of the state, like, hey, Aledo girls basketball can play a little bit. And so that was a huge honor for us to get invited to that. So, it's just, like I said, it's been a good offseason so far.
All right. Then, Brian, for you, of course, obviously you're going to have to find a new number one scorer with Joaquin Pacheco graduating. A couple of other seniors are leaving as well. But the core of this, I mean, it's a lot of younger guys that are coming back for this squad. So just talk about the makeup of this roster moving into 2025-26.
Yeah, I think, 6 of our top 8 scorers are coming back. And so what we have to do is, I think everybody understands that when you replace someone like Joaquin, who is a high scorer, that other guys are just going to have to fill in the gaps. And so really, our message to the guys this spring is going to be, we don't need you to be Superman. We just need you to average 3 or 4 more points a game. And so if our top 6 guys average 3 or 4 more points a game, well, that's 24 points right there.
Right.
And so I think, our style of play, in my experience, usually doesn't have a guy who averages 20 points. It's usually a lot of guys averaging between 12 and 15. And so I think it'll kind of go back to that.
I think of it like Andy Enfield over at SMU, where he has about 5-6 guys that are averaging double figures just because of the way his offense is run over there. And
so that's kind of what we're expecting. Dilla Pipkins played great late in district play. Towns had some really big games for us throughout the year. And then Enrique Pacheco, Caden Cunningham, those are 4 guys right there that play a ton of minutes. Caden Claiborne. So, again, most of our guys coming back that play major minutes were underclassmen.
And I would think, too, now, but the perception of your program now changes because you guys go from being kind of off the radar now to kind of having that target on your back, too, because of the fact that you guys just won this district, and even though you're coming back for year 2 of this realignment, it's going to be something where you guys are going to – now everyone's going to look at you differently too, and that's something that's part of the expectations, and those are something like now you have to handle it. It was one thing to go through the season as you all were winning the district, which, by the way, if people didn't know, this team wound up winning the district by 2 games. They finished 11-1, and Keller, Fossil Ridge, and Brewer each finished at 9-3, unless I got
Chisholm Trail.
Chisholm Trail and Brewer finished at 9-3. But anyway, it's just that perception now where you guys now will be considered. Oh, okay, we got to they might circle your name around their schedules even more so than they did last year, or even as the season was progressing.
Sure. And, same thing. Some people have already dropped us as far as non-district games. And
by the way, that's a sign of respect, too. We should know that.
So, yeah, I think our guys are definitely going to have a chip on their shoulder when it comes to our spring and summer workouts. And so I think that'll kind of, propel them. And then as coaches, we have to do a good job of motivating them to make sure that, hey, let's focus our energies in the right areas to continue to improve and make next year a great year.
All right. Gentlemen, I really enjoyed sharing Mondays with you throughout the course. That one time in December, that one time in November, and then when we got it going in January. And so I really enjoyed getting to know your team, celebrating your seasons. It was a lot of fun to talk shop and get to know your players a little bit. We'll look forward to it. I might even bring you guys back toward the end of May or something like that, just to kind of see how things are going in the off season as we get toward May, and then we look ahead toward the season. But gentlemen, thank you so much. Donny out, the girls coach, Brian Blackburn, the boys coach. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
All right. Just a couple of other highlights to let you know about with Aledo Sports here. Of course, we're going to transition this podcast over to the baseball and softball seasons, as well as the soccer seasons, because all of them are underway. The girls and boys are having a great seasons on the soccer side. The girls are 11-4 and 6-2. That leads District 5-5A. On Tuesday, they were home to Keller Fossil Ridge. The boys are having a really good year. They're 10-3-1 and 6-1-1. They are in second place in 5-5A behind Saginaw. They are at Keller Fossil Ridge. And, of course, softball is into its second week of the season. Baseball just got going last week. Of course, that all kind of got moved around because of the tournaments being impacted by the cold weather. But we also want to remind you, too, that this podcast is brought to you by our two presenting sponsors. First, H5 Sports Barn. H5 Sports Barn and iPhysio and Performance can help unlock your athletic potential and elevate your game like the Aledo Bearcats. With expert sports physical therapy, tailored recovery plans, and top-notch sports performance training, H5 Sports Barn, proud supporters of the Aledo Bearcats. And by Hiley Mazda, head to Hiley Mazda of Fort Worth today. Their new state-of-the-art facility is conveniently located just off of I-30. Exit Las Vegas Trail and experience top-notch service and hassle-free buying. Don't forget to ask about this month's special offers. Hiley Mazda of Fort Worth, family owned and operated for over 30 years. Next week, we'll talk a little soccer and softball and baseball with those respective coaches. Again, we want to thank Donny Ott, the girls coach, and Brian Blackburn, the boys coach, for celebrating their seasons. Once again, the ladies finish at 23-12. The boys finish at 27-7. Great seasons all around for Aledo boys basketball, and a lot to look forward to in 2025-26. I'm Kevin Lonnquist here at Boo Rays of New Orleans in Hudson Oaks. We'll see you next week on the Aledo Coaches Show podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Aledo Coaches Show podcast, brought to you by H5 Sports Barn in Aledo and Hiley Mazda of Fort Worth. With the voice of the Bearcats, Kevin Lonnquist. Please like and subscribe to this podcast and tell a friend. You're also welcome to join us every Monday night at 7 for Boo Rays of New Orleans in Hudson Oaks. It's the Aledo Coaches Show podcast, a presentation of Real Country 92.1 Hank FM.